6 ways that you can lower your risk of breast cancer, coming up right now on the exam room. And welcome to the Exam Room Live, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hi, I am the champion, Chuck Carroll. Thank you so very much for watching and downloading in more than 150 countries around the world and making the Exam Room one of the most consumed nutrition podcasts anywhere on the planet today. And today the focus is on breast cancer. As we kick off our Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign, we're going to be talking about 6 ways every woman can lower their risk of breast cancer. 6 proven ways. And then we're also going to be getting into the mammogram debate, some new survey studies. And to dive into that with us is our dear friend. She is a breast cancer surgeon to the stars and just an all-around incredible human being. With that, we welcome Dr. Kristi Funk back to the exam room. Thanks for being here, Doc.
Thanks for having me, everybody. It's time.
Yeah, I'm loving the hat. They actually gave me one here too. Our brand new Let's Beat Breast Cancer swag, which, by the way, you can rock a hat just like Dr. Kristi Funk. There it is. Look at that. PCRM.org/shop. We have a sale right now all throughout the month of October for all of our Let's Beat Breast Cancer gear. And this hat, and you tell me, Dr. Funk, as you model that hat, it says that it is a cool fit. It is adjustable, ultra lightweight, moisture wicking, and has UPF protection 50 plus. Very cool.
Yes, it is cool, and it can be yours for the low price of I have no idea what. So
$18.
Time. Glamour boy, my friend.
It is I,
October.
Glamour boy. So let's dive into this. I feel like there's been a lot of new advancements in breast cancer this year, including a study that came out that examined the pillars of lifestyle medicine and just how beneficial they can be in terms of reducing the risk of breast cancer. Now, we talked a lot about previously the 4 prongs in our 4-pronged approach to beating breast cancer. So I want to start with the pillars that we have not yet discussed here on the show. And those 3 pillars are sleep management, stress management, and social connection. Not really big in the breast cancer discussion. Why are we just now learning about these, Doc?
You know, I think there's new science that's uncovering the power of all 3 of those things: sleep, social connection, and stress management. So I kind of want to dive into a little bit of the physiology, and I think the most important, everything is important and has a role, but there are, heavyweights that tip scales. And I think of those 3 that are in addition to our 4-pronged approach, sleep is the most critical. If you think about it, if you sleep 8 hours a night, and if you were to live to 90 years old, you spend 30 years asleep, like on Rumpelstiltskin mode here, right? So what is happening? I believe that we were intelligently designed by a God. So I believe that sleep, if we're going to spend a third of our lives in it, is probably doing something more than nothing. So a lot of people consider sleep passive, right? Like you just wake up refreshed so you can power through yet another day. But there's so much that science has been uncovering. For example, it was only in 2012 that scientists first discovered something called the glymphatic system. So this is basically how your brain takes the trash out. It's not the lymphatic system, it's the channels your glial cells, your neurons in your brain use to get rid of beta amyloid, which is plaque that when it builds up too consistently leads to Alzheimer's disease directly. So this glymphatic system, we just found out about it a little over 10 years ago. And one of the reasons why is it's a dynamic active system. You have to be alive to see it. And so normally brains were analyzed post-mortem, and so they never noticed it. They literally didn't know that we have a very specific system by which your brain gets rid of all of the extra inflammation and toxins through this system. But specific to breast cancer, let's think about what sleep is doing, because literally 70 million Americans say that they have poor sleep. And when you ask breast cancer survivors, 70% of them say that they also report sleep disturbances. They have difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep. And this is all likely related to an exacerbation of in the moment, chemo, surgery, radiation, they can have pain and discomfort. And in the long term, we induce a lot of chronic conditions, specifically menopause-like symptoms that would have you waking up with hot flashes and inducing insomnia. So there's, that, and then there's the anxiety associated with cancer recurrence, which what better time than 2 a.m. is a great moment. Potential mortality and all the things that stress you out, and depression. So there was a study, not a study, the big Women's Health Initiative, which looked at a number of things way beyond hormone replacement therapy. And in that, what they found was that among breast cancer survivors, before they were diagnosed, if they had a shorter sleep duration, specifically less than or equal to 5 hours per night, they had a much higher mortality rate than those who reported sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night. So the goal here with sleep is 7 to 9 hours for all adults, 7 to 8 hours if you are over the age of 65. And I want to kind of dive for a second into a couple of the big reasons why sleep is directly related to cancer. One of them is melatonin. So we live in this circadian rhythm. Most people have heard of that, but what is it exactly? It's our 24-hour clock of the sleep-wake cycle. Turns out our cells are also tuned into this sleep-wake cycle. And of all the cells that matter the most when it comes to killing cancer, you would pick out the natural killer cells, the NK cells, who do exactly that. They naturally kill cancer. When are they most active? At night. When at night? In stages of deep sleep. What is destroying our deep sleep? Oh, so many things, like consumption of alcohol and tobacco and a lack of exercise and being overweight, and all of the other pillars actually come into the sleep pillar to either promote it or mess it up. So it's critical that this circadian rhythm is like following its path. And the key moderators of that are melatonin and cortisol. So melatonin is a very potent antioxidant, and it starts to rise in the early evening, and it sings you a lullaby. So you get sleepy, like the snake in the Jungle Book, right? Like, sleep now. You fall asleep, the melatonin peaks around 2 to 5 a.m. And as it then starts to pretty rapidly fall, cortisol comes to the rescue to wake you up. And now you're refreshed and ready for a brand new awesome day. There are also so much of tips and tricks on how you elevate cortisol even higher in the morning so that it has a nice, gradual, but definite return to baseline. A lot of people in chronic stress situations, which is another pillar, right? The 3 S's here. We'll get to stress, but this is how it ties straight into sleep. They have cortisol elevation that barely goes down over the day, and it remains elevated. And now you're trying to fall asleep when you have too much cortisol on board. So I have so many tips and tricks, but one really powerful one, because it's entirely free and easy to do, is to get outside within the first 90 minutes of waking, ideally within 30 to 60 minutes, but we'll take 90. Get outside. If it's a cloudy, overcast day, you want to be out there sipping your morning coffee, no sunglasses. You can have glasses or contacts and be reading a newspaper. I just said that to be funny. Nobody even gets the newspaper. So you just want this light, this early morning, low UV light to enter into your eyes. It is altering the suprachiasmatic nucleus. The SCN is the master clock. So we have all of these circadian clocks that literally live in every single cell, but the master clock talks to the baby clocks, and it is altered by light. So when you get this early morning light, you're going to spike your cortisol higher, giving you even more energy and focus for the day. And then it's going to help that trajectory that I want for it to be low come dusk and nighttime, when we're starting to get into the groove of, okay, I'm getting sleepier and it's time to go to bed. Again, around dusk, sundown, lower UV light, back outside you go. On cloudy days, 15 to 20 minutes. On sunny days, 5 minutes. So it doesn't take a ton of time. You can multitask outside, but you want this light getting in your eyes because it has a powerful effect on the circadian rhythm. And these circadian clock genes that are inside every cell interact with tumor suppressor genes. Okay, this is a mouthful, but let's just break it down. Tumor cancer suppressor crunches it. Okay, so we have genes that crush cancer, tumor suppressors, and they run on the circadian clock. And when you mess up your sleep, and when your cortisol and melatonin patterns aren't in sync, you are not suppressing cancer. So let's think about if there's any science that points this out, and indeed there is. So for example, if you're blind, it's dark all the time, and you have more melatonin. So in addition to setting your circadian rhythm, I mentioned melatonin is a powerful antioxidant. It literally repairs DNA damage, and it halts tumor growth. So if you're blind and you have more melatonin, you should have less breast cancer. And in fact, we find 57% less breast cancer in blind women. And if you work the night shift, if you are a flight attendant or a nurse or a janitor, you have brightness all day and then overhead lights in your work all night, and your circadian rhythm is messed up. You tend to try to sleep in the day, you got the blackout curtains going, right? And in fact, we find a 40% increase in breast cancer in people who work the night shift. In fact, the IARC, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, who is an unpaid world authority on what causes cancer in humans and not, classifies the night shift as a group 2 carcinogen. So probably carcinogenic to humans. Same thing.
Wow.
You read me. Yeah. So that's how important melatonin and sleep are in terms of cancer connection. And the big bottom line is that the natural killer cells party at night. That's when they peak and do their thing. Their lowest activity level is during the day because you're doing so many other things. I guess the cells are distracted. Here's a fun study that I want to just bring out in the sleep thing, and then we can fire away.
Yeah, but let me jump in before you bring up that study. There's a question in the chat right now. Terrible Lotus at 1217 asked, kind of splitting the difference of what you were talking about. What tips might you have for somebody that does have to get up before sunrise, especially in winter when it seems like the sunrise just doesn't want to happen, period, a lot of times?
I hear you. 10,000 lux light in your home. They're not that expensive. Amazon has them. Then you're just going to sit under the bright light in your own home. Probably pretty easy to do because your morning routine, I'm guessing, might take 20 minutes by the time you brush and floss and etc. So that's what you do.
As you were with the study.
As I was. So I wanted to talk about this human study because it's so fun, and it really just makes the point about how important sleep is to your immune system functioning well. And so we found out that human studies show that even just one night of sleeping poorly, by definition 5 hours, led to a drop in these natural killer cells that I've been talking about are so protective. And it sent a bump in interleukins, which are inflammatory cytokines that weaken your immune system. And decreased sleep in a chronic state, months to years, will lead to weight gain. It impairs glucose management. We're going to get into talking, I'm sure, about glucose and hyperinsulinemia, and this is a huge cancer risk factor. But there is, in terms of your immune system taking a hit, this is a fun study, I think. It was 3 weeks long. So first they took 153 healthy adults. Let's be real, they're always college students who do these things for $800. So they were called every single night for 14 nights in a row, or mornings, I suppose, to say, like, how'd you sleep last night? So they kept track of how well they felt they slept, what their sleep efficiency was, which is the percentage of time that you are in bed but actually asleep as opposed to fidgeting, and how many hours, right? So I would have done that for $800, but that's not where the study actually starts. Then they're brought into quarantine, and they literally have rhinovirus, so your common cold, a vial of it shoved up their noses. And you'd think that all of them would be sick by morning, but nope. It turns out your immune system can fend off even rhinovirus just directly shoved up your nose. And what they found was that those who reported having slept 7 hours or less, I mean, that's a lot. I would say a lot of people routinely sleep 6 hours a night. 7 hours or less, they were 3 times more likely to develop a cold within the following 5 days, which they kept in quarantine, versus those who slept 8 hours or more. And those with less than 92% sleep efficiency. So what that means is at least 92% or more of the time that you are laying in bed, you are actually asleep. I have this Garmin that tracks my sleep and my sleep stages and sleep duration and whether I'm awake or asleep and if I'm in REM or deep. I would encourage, if you really care about your health or need to pay attention to better sleep, that you get one of these kind of sleep monitor devices. They're really helpful because I will tell you, before I had the watch, I would wake up and be like, I feel great. I think it actually works to my detriment sometimes because then I'll look and my watch will be like, you slept terribly. You feel awful. I'm like, wait a minute. But so this was the interesting part about the study that kind of just ties into what I just said about how I am. Irrespective of how people thought they felt, if their sleep efficiency, time in bed actually asleep, was less than 92%, they were 450% more likely to have a cold within those 5 days of having that squirted up their nose. So 5.5 times the increase in getting colds simply because they spent too much time in bed awake. So interesting. If you're prone to colds, I would say sleep 8 hours every night and eat garlic, which has nothing to do with the study. That was just a freebie that I threw in there for you.
And let's drive home the point here, and that's that the immune system doesn't just fight off the colds and flus and things like that. Your immune system, correct me if I'm wrong, actually does a bang-up job, or is supposed to do a bang-up job, of fighting off cancer cells that pop up pretty frequently in the body, and most times the immune system is able to tackle them, but if it's suppressed, you could find yourself in a bad way.
100%. So I've tried to look it up, and I get such a varied response in different analyses, like how many cancer cells do we make a day? It's somewhere between like 10,000 and 10 million. It's a lot. They need fighting. They need fixing. They need to be stopped before they propagate into a cancerous wad that they can get into bloodstream and metastasize and threaten your life. And the cells that do that identification, halt, let me fix you or throw you out because you're altered, are immune system cells. So there's so much about the simplicity of cancer, really, that you just have to realize there's only really like a yin yang, like a whole balance system going on in your body with so many things. So a little bit of stress is good, right? Like that idea of hormesis, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but too much stress and things take a hit. A little bit of estrogen is great for us women. Too much estrogen and it can feed and fuel into cancer promotion. A little IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1, beautiful fertilizer for all of our cells because we turn over 50 billion normal cells a day that all need to be replaced. Too much IGF-1 and boom, who knew that your body could make so many weeds in this garden? So it's all about balance. And the bottom line cell game that's being played is between proto-oncogenes and tumor suppressor genes. Okay, I know, getting into the nerdy weeds here. Proto-oncogenes are your normal cells. They're just doing what they should do. They chug along. They're like, oh, I'm kind of petering out now. I'm going to make a second one of me and I'm going to fade away. And my new happy, recreated cell will go on and do whatever it is supposed to do in this person. All right. So proto-oncogenes, they respond naturally. They lightly touch the gas when they replicate. Tumor suppressor genes are the brakes. They're like, whoa, just tap, let me see you, proto-oncogene. Yeah, you made a little mistake there. Let me fix you. Bring out the mechanic, fix it. Suppressor steps off the brake and happily put away goes the proto-oncogene. We have two major alterations that your daily choices can have to keep things homeostatic and happy, like I just described, or to make them go wildly out of whack. So all of a sudden, this proto-oncogene can just step on the gas and replicate so quickly that it's going to make a mistake, and the suppressor gene can't even stop it fast enough, and it just rams straight into a cancerous mass because it escaped your body's natural protection by going full bore on the gas and never letting go. That's called an oncogene. That's a genetic switch. That what you eat, what you think, what you do, whether you sleep, how much you stress, how much you love others, all flips switches. And the other thing that can happen is your tumor suppressor, your brake, doesn't break. These are genes, some of which people have heard of that control this, like P53, BRCA, BRCA1 and 2, CHEK2. These are tumor suppressor genes. So when you're born with a handicap in them, we have to double down on all the things we know we can do through diet and lifestyle and environmental exposure limitations to help a broken gene out, because it doesn't really step on the gas so readily to halt the proliferation of what can become a cancer cell, to fix it or throw it out. And that's the bottom line of cancer. It's this whole car analogy of gas and brake.
All right, let's move on and talk about a couple of other things. You kind of mentioned stress a few times, but we haven't really dived too deeply into the science there. So let's spend about 3 to 4 minutes talking about the connection there. I want to make sure that we have time to hit on each of these 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine and their effects here. But let's talk stress next. How toxic is stress really in terms of our cancer risk?
It's toxic, but it's hard to study. So we know that psychological stress has been directly connected to cardiovascular disease, metabolic diseases, immune system dysfunction, and psychiatric diseases. Tying it directly to cancer is a little bit more challenging, but there are like epidemiologic and preclinical studies that suggest that this chronic uncontrolled stress through similar pathways of neuroendocrine, like basically when you stress out, you mess up your biochemistry. And when you do that, you mess up your immune system. And now we're back to the car with the gas and the brake being all messed up. So chronic stress plays a role to some degree in cancer initiation, progression, and metastasis. And it can definitely negatively affect the response of therapies that we're trying to administer to a cancer patient by weakening the immune system and stopping you from being able to do what you need to do. I think the main thing people need to understand is that mind-body connection is oh so real, right? You just ask any man who's ever had an erection. You just think about you watching a scary movie and your heart starts pounding and your palms start sweating and you are safe on your couch, and yet, right? So what you perceive in your mind, your body, your biochemistry, the neuroendocrine response to what you're perceiving in your mind acts like you're the one in that high-speed car chase in the movie you're watching. You're the one trying to outrun the bear or the hidden monster. So it's pretty incredible that with all of our intelligence, we can't like override the body's natural reaction to emit norepinephrine and epinephrine in response to a perceived threat, even when our higher brain is like, there's no threat here. You don't have to be so worried. The bills will get paid somehow. This cancer treatment is going to work. But your mind takes over with the what if, and you get this chronic output of stress. And two of the things we know stress does, it inhibits sleep. So back to what we already just talked ad nauseum about, right? So now your stress is impacting some other pillar, which has another way of hitting your immune system. And it turns out stress alters your microbiome. So we live in concert with all of these critters throughout our body, but mostly concentrated in the gut, and they need a healthy balance. When you have dysbiosis and overgrowth of the bad bacteria, which is what stress does, it hits the good bacteria and makes a proliferation of bad ones. You're going to lose what's called tight junctions, where the little cells are playing a game of Red Rover, and they're hanging on tight to each other until there's an overgrowth of bad bacteria and everything starts to break down and it gets loose. And now toxins and inflammatory compounds and bile acids and excess estrogen that was supposed to go away all comes back into circulation like bad karma. You were supposed to poop it out, but now it's back in you, causing inflammation. And believe it or not, that's directly correlated to stress levels.
All right. If you have a question for Dr. Funk, drop it in the comments or in the chat. We're going to get to as many as we can here when we open up that doctor's mailbag. Next up is social connection, Dr. Funk. And this is one that has really fascinated me ever since I did my first interview with Dan Buettner in the Blue Zones, because he really trumpets this also as one of the hallmarks of these blue zones regions around the world. People who live the longest tend to also have really ultra strong social connections. Call it a sense of purpose, a reason to get up in the morning, friendship, family. What do we know about the social connections in terms of a person's cancer risk?
We know quite a bit. And yet that the Buettner's work and the multi-generational living and feeling loved and supported goes a long way into calming down your own nervous system. It ties back into I'm going to sleep well and I'm going to stress less, and my body therefore is going to be better armed and equipped to fend off any unwanted intruders, be it just a little rhinovirus shoved straight up your nose or a cancer cell that's, turned into an oncogene and is mutated. In LACE, the Life After Cancer Epidemiology Study, over 2,200 early stage breast cancer patients were followed for 10.8 years. And what they found was that those who reported out low, not high, levels of social support and or a lack of religious or social active participation were 58% more likely to have died in that decade of follow-up than those with high levels of support. Another study that's even worse is a prospective study of 2,800 women with invasive breast cancer who experienced pre-diagnosis social isolation. They had a 114% increase in breast cancer mortality. So twice as likely to die from their breast cancers compared with women who were socially integrated. So before you get a breast cancer diagnosis, get yourself socially integrated because it's going to help you live longer should you ever get breast cancer. Specifically, this study found that a lack of close relatives, a lack of friends, or a lack of living children was each independently associated with increased breast cancer mortality. So this should just incentivize you to get involved in community activities. Maybe you're not religious, but maybe you have a common interest in the arts with others. So you could go to places where, even a community college class, just find yourself a like-minded group where you can plug in and make social connection. Hi, how are you today? The whole cheers thing where everyone knows your name, it goes a long way to creating a non-inflammatory environment inside you. And that's the bottom line.
Yeah, I am just fascinated by what the physiological response is inside the body when we do have these connections. Like, does it power up the immune system? Does it just make your body function that much better? Or is it just the sheer will to live or reason to get up? Is that like a physical thing that happens inside of our body as well? I don't know, but honest to goodness, like, it just fascinates the bejeebers out of me.
Right. It is fascinating. And I think it's all of the above, and a lot of it is unknown. But I think it's much akin to, I remember we used to bike ride constantly on the beach bike path with the kids when they were little, like, 5, 6 years old. And this one time, poor Justin, he just bit it, like flew off his bike like Superman across the cement, just, and then came to an abrupt halt. And he kind of rolled over, and there was an immediate ring of standard passersby who stopped, and they were just like, "Are you okay, kid?" But I was coming up behind him, so I finally got up, stopped, and you could see he was just like panicked, and then zoom, eyes locked on me, all his respiration calmed down. He realized he actually wasn't hurt, got right back on his bike, and we rode home. And I think that was it, right? It was the connection, like, I'm safe here, I'm loved here, my alarm bells can quiet down now.
Wow. That's awesome. I'm glad he's okay.
he's
You guys are still riding bikes to this day. Like, you guys are a bike riding family.
So we are. Well, I'm proud to brag that my one son is on Team USA for cycling. So
Yeah.
maybe the Olympics.
I'm telling you. Looking forward to it in LA. Just saying.
28.
All right, let's talk about the other outstanding pillars here that are part of the 4 prongs. And I think that, just given the fact that the exam roomies, they love to talk nutrition. So let's talk a little bit about the connection between diet and breast cancer risk. And let's also bring into the conversation a survey that we did here at the Physicians Committee that specifically asked women about how aware they were that their diet was, in fact, a profound factor in their breast cancer risk. What are the new findings that we have, one, from the survey, and then 2, are there any interesting nutritional related studies that you've seen over the past year since you've been on this show that you think, hey man, the world needs to know about this?
Yes and yes. So for sure. The survey asked just over 2,200 women, like, hey, What do you know about breast cancer prevention? What can prevent breast cancer? And over 60% said, well, mammograms and self breast exams, which is a great answer for early detection, but that is not prevention. So others replied, 25% of them mentioned diet. 75% didn't even think diet had anything to do with breast cancer prevention. 12% mentioned alcohol, 12% mentioned exercise, and only 5% mentioned weight. So those, my friends, are the 4 pillars in the 4-pronged approach to beating breast cancer. The science clearly favors these 4 things as heavy weights tipping the scales either toward cancer or away, depending whether or not you are eating a whole food plant-based diet, exercising regularly, maintaining ideal body weight, and minimizing or avoiding alcohol. Those 4 factors really set up a tumor cell microenvironment that's screaming out pro fill in the blank, pro estrogen, pro blood vessel formation, pro growth factors in the form of IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor, pro insulin resistance, which then lets insulin come out to party with glucose in hand to feed all the cancer cells. So you're making these choices through these 4 pillars to either temper those things and create an anti-cancer environment, or to ramp them up so that your little mutated cell, the thing that stepped on the gas too hard, suddenly has all the things it needs to survive and thrive. So one recent study, 2025 update to the Adventist Health 2 study. This is a cohort of 80,000 people that have been followed for 20 years. And they asked a bajillion questions so that they could get 10 bajillion papers out of the same group of people. And we're also glad they did. And one of them looked at vegans, vegetarians, and non-vegetarians and breast cancer development. So we have 80,000 people followed for 20 years. And what the study just reported out this year was that there's a 31% drop in breast cancer for young people, which was defined as median age 65. Yay, still young. And a 26% drop in breast cancer for older people, median age 85. But one thing I liked about this study was when I read it more carefully, we are talking vegans. So the thrust of the paper was vegetarians versus non-vegetarians, and within the vegetarian category is ovo, egg, lacto eating vegetarians or pescatarians who have fish. And when you lumped all vegetarians to include vegans and ovo, lacto, and pescatarians, there was no difference in breast cancer incidence or outcome. None. So what I get from this is that the so seemingly innocent addition of an egg here, some cheese on that salad, a little salmon fillet, actually negates all of the healthy plant-based eating to the point in this study where there was no difference between that whole bigger category of vegetarians versus non.
Can we take a second and drill into that a little bit? Like, were they able to discern whether or not, like, the egg created more risk than the cheese, or the salmon created more risk than the egg? What do we know there?
Nothing from that study. They didn't dig into that at all with the discussion. It was something sort of I just teased out, realizing that there was no difference until we pulled in just vegans. But, I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and there are hierarchies. People will forever ask me, when I have a new cancer patient, I dive into nutrition and the effects that your food has inside your body. There's inevitable, predictable questions. We all know that where you're going to get your protein question, but this is deeper. This is like, well, what about, right? What about organic? What about, okay, I get the processed meat thing, but can I have a filet if it's, happily raised on 4,000 acres, et cetera? So no and no relative to anything. Like, those are the absolute worst. Then you get into like poultry, chicken, and turkey versus fish. Okay, well, fish is better, but you still are going to create polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and heterocyclic amines when you cook or grill fish. The combination of the creatine in the meat with heat creates these highly carcinogenic compounds. We are not talking about Jesus fisherman days. These fish are swimming in a sea filled with dioxins and PCBs and microplastics, and it gets into the meat and you swallow it down. They're filled with saturated and trans fats and cholesterol. They're zero fiber, zero water. So anyway, yeah, you can have your fish, but relative to next up, I would say dairy, and then I would say eggs are the least offensive when you just are strictly talking about health impact. And the reason why is that fish has all that stuff I just mentioned versus dairy has a bigger mix of some healthy things. The only thing fish has going for it is omega-3 fatty acids, really, and protein. Dairy, on the other hand, has a mix of some healthy things like calcium and vitamin D and butyrate, and lactoferrin, but then it has a bunch of negative things like aflatoxin, pesticides, pus. Did you know 2% of your milk carton is legally allowed to be pure pus because all those cows that are lactating have so much mastitis, so much
That's so gross.
infection. Yeah, they can't get rid of the pus. So when they are, in those contraptions that milk them, they inevitably poke into like a big abscess and the pus leaks down in the milk. And so you're allowed to have 2% of that when you're drinking. So there's some...
Because I'm sure that's the 2% that people are looking for when they buy that 2% carton of milk.
Right. Does it not, like cream of the crop, does it go to the top? It just mixes in and you're drinking it down. And then eggs, again, the yolk has a lot of cholesterol. The whites have choline, which when it travels down to your gut microbiome, turns into trimethylamine and oxide, TMAO, which is a powerful inflammatory compound that gets into the bloodstream then, where we know it promotes cardiovascular disease and chronic kidney disease and has been associated with breast and prostate cancers. So that was my way of saying the paper didn't get into it, but I know from, how I think through things. There is a hierarchy to badness in the animal world of foods, keeping aside, of course, animal cruelty and horrific harms of factory farming and environmental toxicities and planet destruction and biodiversity loss, without getting into any of that. If you're just going to tunnel vision, is this bad for my health? There are always better choices when you're comparing it to pure plant-based. But within the animal kingdom, there are better and worse choices.
Let's talk about some of the better choices from the plant-based side of things. If you're writing a prescription out for your patients, what are some of the most cancer-fighting foods that you would put at the top of your list?
Tippity top of the list, we've got soy. Did I say soy? For those of you who have never met me, yes, I said soy with purpose and conviction based on science. So soy in every single human study ever done, period end, has had a beneficial effect on decreasing breast cancer occurrence, recurrence, and death, generally to the tune of a 25 to 60% decrease in said things. Some studies have a null effect, but never once, not ever, has soy and humans in a study equaled increased breast cancer. So soy, top of the list. Right next to it is cruciferous vegetables, specifically broccoli and broccoli sprouts, but I will take it all from arugula and kale to cauliflower and Brussels sprouts, and we can get Caldwell Esselstyn on here and have him sing his song about all the cruciferous vegetables. And third up would be flax seeds, the lignans in flax. So flax is the most concentrated form of healthy omega-3 fatty acids on planet Earth, which has a lot of anti-inflammatory health to it. But I'm more interested when it comes to breast cancer in the lignans in flax, which act like phytoestrogens similar to soy to decrease breast cancer recurrence and death. There was one study that came out of New York that showed for the highest versus lowest lignan consumers who got breast cancer, there was 71% less breast cancer specific mortality for those who had the highest lignan intake. Number 4 would be green tea. The epigallocatechin gallate, EGCG, is such a magical phytochemical inside green tea. You do not want to miss out on getting that into your body every single day. 3 cups of green tea has been shown in a very large volume study that came out of Asia to decrease those stages 1 and 2 breast cancer recurrence remarkably by 57% and 31% respectively. And the 5th one would be berries. berries, mushroom, cinnamon, turmeric. It's so hard to pick a fifth. But suffice to say, eat the rainbow, fruits, vegetables, legumes, lentils, beans, peas, soy, whole grains. Just color up the plate. Have a little bit of as much as you can, and aim for like 30 different foods in a given week. So you're mixing up the phytonutrient balance, and you don't have to overthink it. It's not that difficult. If you're focusing on whole food plants, you will eat the rainbow just naturally.
Can I throw you a curveball?
Curve away.
All right, here's the curve. So you're talking about putting colors on your plate. Driving in to do the show with you today, I heard on the radio that Walmart is actually going to be removing a lot of the synthetic dyes from their store shelves, or products that contain these synthetic dyes. Obviously, that's been a lot of the conversation recently with the new administration in the White House. I'm curious if you know of any studies, any reports, research out there that look specifically at these types of synthetic dyes and a woman's risk for cancer.
Oof, I don't have a specific study in mind, but I would say, again, in the hierarchy of all the things that you can do, think, move, drink, a little dye is not going to harm you, but it's what has dye. That's the problem. It's Skittles, right? So this is the issue, is that the food that contains the dye is just ultra processed, pure inflammatory, non-nutrient sustaining junk. So that's the issue. So when you're eating more of that, you're going to have more hyperglycemia. It's going to lead to insulin resistance, because these foods often are high in fat, and that leads to insulin resistance, as we've talked about, with fat hitting the receptor for insulin, causing insulin not to be able to get in there to tell everybody, like, hey, let's eat the sugar that's inside the bloodstream right now. So the sugar stays elevated, and we have this double whammy cancer promoting effect of too much insulin and too much sugar flying around, fueling cancer cells to divide, metastasize. But I don't know of any direct connection between like red dye 40 and increased breast cancer.
I appreciate the honesty. I appreciate the candor there. The good answer, man. I like where your head's at. Let's talk about the other two lifestyle pillars that we have not yet touched on. Let's start with alcohol. This one, I think it does break hearts, because we do hear still to this day that there are benefits to drinking something like a glass of red wine. But then there's been a lot of research over the last couple of years that shows that there's absolutely no benefit whatsoever to any alcohol consumption, which is why it's one of the pillars here for lifestyle medicine, avoiding risky substances. The connection between alcohol and breast cancer is what, Dr. Funk?
The connection is multifactorial. It is going to start with that when you sip on alcohol, any type of poison, pick your wish, wine, beer, or hard liquor, you're going to turn it into acetaldehyde, which is a potent carcinogen. And we know that drinking alcohol is directly connected to increasing 7 different types of cancer: the mouth, pharynx, larynx, esophagus, colorectum, liver, and breast. So I hate to be a buzzkill, but yes, drinking alcohol increases breast cancer risk. Another mechanism by which alcohol does its damage is it increases estrogen. Estrogen fuels 80% of breast cancers. It impairs your immune system. So now we're back to our little car with the gas and the suppressor genes, the brake, and that gets disrupted and messed up. It also leads to, in many people, weight gain, and adipose is very problematic when it comes to cancer. And we have studies. Oh, darn it. So one such study followed, I think it was like 13,000 postmenopausal women for 10 years. And they found that just 6 grams of alcohol a day. All right. Well, for reference, a 12-ounce can of beer, 5 ounces of wine, or 1.5 ounces of hard liquor is 14 grams. So we're really talking 3 to maybe 4 glasses of alcohol a week, leading to a 13% increase in postmenopausal breast cancer. So when you break it down, it basically goes like this. Pick your poison. A drink a day increases breast cancer risk by 10% over a teetotaler. 2 drinks a day, 25 to 30% increase. 3 drinks a day, 40% increase. And beyond that, you can just add 10% for every drink thereafter. And yeah, those are the mechanisms. It's pretty complex. Another one is it stops uh, methylfolate from forming. So folic acid in your vitamins or folate in your leafy greens gets transformed by MTHFR, which sounds like a really bad word, but it stands for methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase, MTHFR, which 30 to 50% of people are genetically already taking a hit with this enzyme. Like they just are born without it working right. When you don't make your methylfolate because you drank and knocked out this enzyme, your folate isn't getting into methylfolate form. Now you just lost your A1 babysitter, your DNA babysitter. It sits there and watches as it divides. Oh, you made a mistake. It's like a tumor suppressor gene, but it's not. It's methylfolate. So there's so many mechanisms, and that's just the cancer connection. I'm just going to quickly rattle off a couple other things if you need. You're a little bit like, yeah, but resveratrol. We can talk about the J curve if you want, and why all of those studies that say that drinking 1 or 2 glasses of blank will actually protect you against cardiovascular disease are not true. But there are some other facts. A drink a week shrinks your cortical thickness. Your brain, get stupid. From a drink a week, you shrink your cortex and you start to break up important neuronal connections. So you lose your neural plasticity, your ability to lay down new memories and track. You elevate cortisol. We've talked about cortisol in terms of sleep and stress already today. Now you're drinking alcohol and you're elevating your cortisol, which has its own level of bad work to do inside of you when it's elevated, but it also messes up your sleep. So many people will be like, yeah, you know what? Alcohol makes me fall asleep, but bing, I'm wide awake 3 hours later. And that has a very predictable mechanism inside of you. The next thing is that if you had this sleep watch and you drank, you may wake up 8 hours later, you didn't have the bing at 2 a.m. You think you're well rested and you look at your watch and your sleep score is in the trash, like 30 when you normally get 90, because you'd had 0 REM and 0 deep sleep. It was a bunch of light and fitful, useless sleep. So that's a big one. It messes with your gut microbiome. It makes you gain weight. And in certain people, it can mess your relationships up. So alcohol is also bad, Chuck. I hate it. I hate that it is because, some people like their glass of wine to unwind, but it's winding you up, not down.
We just have to find other ways to get that kind of stress relief, as it were.
Social connection. There we go.
I know.
Exercise.
What a concept. A couple of questions from the mailbag, if you don't mind. Liz Kelly, 1247. You were talking about green tea just a moment ago. Liz is wondering whether decaf green tea has the same benefits as you were talking about.
Excellent question. It does if it's processed in a way that maintains the EGCG. So zero connection to the company out there called Say May. But they have done the hard work and studies to show that their EGCG content in their decaf green tea is equal to caffeinated. So just find a reputable company such as that, and it's as good as caffeinated.
Valley Dweller, 1243, talking about omega-3s. Doesn't heat destroy omega-3, so wouldn't cooking fish defeat the purpose of eating it anyway?
Oh, interesting. It's heat stable to a certain temperature. I know that. And the exact temperature, I don't know. But that's why you can cook flax, and the omega-3 is still just as powerful. Like you can put it in a muffin or something. You probably shouldn't have too many muffins, but you get my point. So it is heat stable to a certain degree. Like maybe at 400 degrees, putting it in the oven might be too much. So you got to do, I don't know. This is Googleable, I'm sure. But yes and no. There's a heat threshold by which then it's denatured.
All right, and let's talk about that final pillar here. We kind of glanced on this. We know that the Funk family are fantastic bicyclers, getting out there, exercising, moving the body, including pedaling on those bikes. Really beneficial for cancer prevention and lowering the risk. But to what degree, Dr. Funk?
Ooh, such a great high degree. Let me tell you something. So it improves insulin sensitivity, exercise. It improves body composition and sex hormones. It decreases estrogen and decreases inflammation. But what it really does, which is our theme of today, it improves immune system surveillance and DNA repair. To what degree? Let me tell you about a new study that looked at 1,340 breast cancer patients, stages 1 through 3, all very high risk to recur because they all needed chemotherapy as part of their treatment. And what they looked at was those who exercised before ever getting diagnosed, during their treatment, and they were followed for 2 years. Are you still exercising 2 years later? This is really interesting. You ready? Relative to the couch potato, who did not exercise before, during, or after breast cancer diagnosis, that would be your null person. If you did not exercise before, but you picked it up during and after, relative to the couch potato, you have 46% less breast cancer recurrence. Now, if you were exercising before and kept it up, good on you. The numbers reflect that extra benefit, 55% less recurrence than the couch potato. Here's something fascinating. You exercised before, but for whatever reasons kind of trailed off and gave it up. Now, relative to the couch potato, you have only a 6% decrease in breast cancer recurrence. So all of that hard work that you put in to maintain health kind of got nullified by stopping. Flip that script. It's never too late. Just start. Just put some pep in your step. Just move more. You're going to reap benefits immediately, especially as a breast cancer thriver. So if you're prone to, taking the easy road, like the elevator, start walking a couple flights of stairs a day. Park farther away when you go grocery shopping. Put a little pep in your step when you're doing household chores. And then if you really want to truly exercise rather than move more, the next question I invariably get is, Doc, how much is the bare minimum I have to do to reap the benefits? And honestly, if you look at the curve of health improvement versus just getting up off the couch, you're already getting yourself into an exponential benefit trajectory until about 150 minutes of cardio, moderate exercise, defined by I can talk but not sing right now, whatever I'm doing, briskly walking, riding a bike, running. I can talk but I can't sing, 150 minutes a week. If you want an A++, 300 minutes a week gets you even more gains, but much less than from 0 to 150. That's the sweet spot, 150. That would just be cardio. In addition, I want 2 to 3 times a week of strength training, resistance exercise against your own body weight or actual weights or resistance bands. And that should be at least 20 minutes for 2 to 3 sessions a week, in addition to the 150. And you are in the American Society of Sports Medicine convened in 2018 to create guidelines for cancer patients, and I basically just gave them to you. So the worldwide, or the consensus from that organization that has been adopted by cancer societies worldwide is exactly that: 150 minutes of the cardio and 2 to 3 sessions of strength training, and that potentiates your immune system the best.
All right. Producer Ali just did us a solid, did a little quick Google search going back to the omega-3s. According to Ali, per Google, search results said 320 to 338 degrees Fahrenheit for heat stability of omega-3s. That is the temperature at which oxidation begins to occur. So, for those of you who are nutrition nerds, there's your answer. Thank you, Ali. Greatly appreciate it. Dr. Funk, just to recap here before we move on and talk briefly about mammograms to bring everything home today, those 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine that have been really shown to improve survivorship rates for breast cancer, lower a woman's risk here, they are physical activity, which we just talked about, obviously eating that healthy plant-based diet, social connections, fascinating, getting quality sleep, an adequate amount at that, manage your stress, do something about that, and then avoid those potential toxic substances such as alcohol. If you put all of those 6 things into practice, what percentage would you guesstimate would be a person is able to reduce their risk?
50% for everybody, up to 90% for others. And there's a huge range because of genetics and epigenetics, alterations that have already happened inside of us, and our ability to really dial down and do these things like in a better way, right? There's whole food plant-based eating, and there's vegan eating, and some of it can be junk food, as we all know, for example. But I believe that the science shows that a solid 50%, just for B+ effort on all 6 pillars, will drop your breast cancer risk by 50%. if you go for the A+ effort, 80 to 90% decrease in occurrence, recurrence, or death from breast cancer.
Huge numbers. Any way that you chalk them up, huge numbers that come with a lot of hope as well. Can't let you go without talking about brand new research that came out just honestly as we're doing this show only a few weeks ago that kind of throw a new wrinkle into the mammogram debate. Specifically, this study was looking at older women and the potential benefits of mammograms. What did these findings show?
Yeah, so this comes out of my neighbor, literally across the street, UCLA, and it was an article that just gave us another twist. Here we go. So women who continued to screen with mammography into their 80s had earlier stage, lower risk breast cancers and better outcomes as compared to women that did not have a recent mammogram. Specifically, it was a very small study. They analyzed 174 women who developed breast cancer after the age of 80. But these are pretty staggering numbers. So relative to those who had the mammogram versus didn't, if you got the mammo and got breast cancer, you had a 55% improvement in disease-free survival, which just means there's no identifiable breast cancer in you and you're living your best octogenarian life. And there was a 74% reduction in breast cancer-specific mortality in being dead because you got the mammogram. So when they adjusted for your exact age or the receptor subtype, estrogen positive, estrogen negative, HER2 positive, if you know these things, and the type of surgery, lumpectomy, mastectomy, there was no difference in these results, in these benefits, pointing to the mammography leading to the earlier detection and versus the non-screened women who had more advanced cancers. They were more symptomatic, and they had palpable cancers, which is why they were discovered. So the problem here is that current clinical guidelines don't exist after the age of 75. All of the major societies give their opinions on when to start and stop and how frequently to do it. Whether you begin at 40 or 50 and go every other year or every year, they all end at 74 years old. 75 and up, we got nothing. So I think the most judicious use of mammography in our older ladies for their golden years is to continue mammography if it seems completely reasonable that you will be alive in the next 5 years. So that your death date is obviously impossible to predict, but there are signs that you're, failing. If you're in a wheelchair on supplemental oxygen, you can probably stop doing mammograms. Not because I don't care if you get a breast cancer, but statistically, it's almost impossible for, if you did get a breast cancer, it to then kill you before your advanced COPD or something like that. So I think that's the take-home message, is that you're never too old to detect breast cancer early. And now we're really getting into the biology and the genomics of cancers in such a special way that we're able to de-escalate therapy. Maybe all you need as an older lady with this particular breast cancer is a pill that you might take every day, no surgery, or just surgery and nothing else, no radiation, no pills. We individualize the strategy, but we can do less and still achieve exact same outcomes in terms of surviving this cancer and not dying from it. So almost no end to mammography, ladies. I say begin at age 40. Don't stop and don't skip years until we think the end is very near, within 5 years. And additionally, do learn your breast density. If you find you have dense breasts on a mammogram, we definitely want to supplement with whole breast screening ultrasound. I personally think you should do whole breast screening ultrasound every single year, irrespective of your density. And if you are at elevated risk because of family history, carrying a gene mutation, a personal history of breast cancer, or what we call marker lesions like atypia, then we probably want to up the ante even further with our surveillance, employing breast MRI or perhaps some of these newer imaging techniques that include QT ultrasound or Koenig breast CT. There are a number of new imaging modalities surfacing, and they're really interesting. They're adding to our toolbox for sure.
Do you think that we're at a point in time where, given the fact that generally speaking, people are living longer, save the, pandemic dip that we saw there, that we broadly update those recommendations for cancer screenings to include women over the age of 75?
Definitely. I think physicians and patients alike need guidance, and we need evidence-based guidance on how to manage surveillance for all types of cancers going into these more golden years. Because as people are living longer, hoping that they don't have dementia or Alzheimer's keeping them in, assisted living and difficult situations, the last thing we need is for them to have an advanced stage cancer diagnosed that if we had just screened them, we would have been in cure mode 8 years earlier.
Dr. Kristi Funk, the hour always goes by so quickly when you're on the show. I love it.
I love it too, but I want to remind everybody that if you go to letsbeatbreastcancer.org, you sign up completely for free. You will join our campaign, which encourages women and men to follow the 4-pronged approach to beating breast cancer: eat a whole food plant-based diet, exercise regularly, maintain ideal body weight, minimize alcohol. For free, we will send you our Getting Started guide and our also coveted e-cookbook, obviously total plant-based cookbook with the most delicious breast cancer fighting recipes. And we will keep you updated on all the upcoming events, including 2 pitches. I hope you're watching this live so you didn't miss them. I'm doing live at 5 on Instagram every Tuesday in October, so 7, 14, 21, 28, and with a different special guest each time to really drill down on those 4 prongs, 1 prong each week. And secondly, there are over 66 drum rallies across the country. I literally wait like it's Christmas, but now it's October 1st to bring out my pink drumsticks. I have one use for these, and it's right now. We're gonna beat the drum to beat breast cancer at our drum rallies. So go to letsbeatbreastcancer.org, click on Join a Rally to find one near you. There's going to be lots of survivors, thrivers, family members, health advocates, and experts at each drum rally, including local high school drum lines, helping us make some noise and get strong about our advocacy and our voice about how much control we have over this killer disease.
I love it. You have pink drumsticks. That is rocking.
Yay!
Dope.
I can't play the drum.
Dr. Kristi Funk. Keep banging that drum. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Chuck.
All right. And on behalf of everybody here at the Physicians Committee, I am Chuck Carroll. Thank you so very much for tuning in and raising your health IQ. And if you do feel like you have raised your health IQ by a point or 2 today, also be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. That is how we continue our mission to make the world a healthier place. And on behalf of everybody here at the Physicians Committee, you have yourself a wonderful day. And until next time, keep it plant-based.